You're listening to Releasing Trauma, a survivor's podcast. And now here's your host, Tracy Osborne. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the show. Today, we are talking about our stories and how our story matters. And going by my guest book title, for sure, Linda Olson is our guest today. Her book title, Story Matters, Empowering Your Hope While Going Through Tough Times. You can't make it any clearer than that. Your story matters, and your story not only empowers you as you tell it, but it helps and empowers other people. So, Linda, welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you. I'm just excited to be with you and share with your listeners.
Well, I'm excited to have you. This is it's a fun topic for me, but our stories change over the course of our lives. But what happens oftentimes is that the stories that we're telling ourselves don't change. Even though we've changed and our true story has changed, the story that we keep repeating doesn't change. And so we get stuck, right? So being able to talk about this today with you and how, you have to continue telling your story, but you have to also let that story evolve. How important that is.
Yeah, well said. Absolutely. Yeah. Because just like you said, we can get stuck. Mm-hmm. And, it's like our life goes on, but we're still stuck mentally in the stories from the past. But it doesn't have to be that way.
Exactly. So, I guess maybe we should start with kind of explaining a little bit clearer what we mean when we're talking about our stories.
Well, that's a good question. And often when I give I do 2 story retreats each year and different things. And that's exactly where I start. I said, we all want to be on the same page. So how would you define story? And the best definition I came up with was from Webster's dictionary. And it said, story is simply an experience that we share with someone. It's really as simple as that. It's an experience. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you can't get much more simple than that.
Right.
Yeah. So it is telling our life stories and our experiences. But, I want to mention this quote that I saw on your website when I was looking at your website today. Owning our story and loving ourselves in the process is the bravest thing we'll ever do. And that's from Brene Brown. And we can tell our stories all day long, but until we own our story and accept our story and love ourselves, even despite our stories, we're just not going to, we're not going to grow. We're not going to move forward.
And that's what it takes to going from being stuck in our story to moving forward. It takes owning and loving our stories. Absolutely. And as you know, that's a process that doesn't happen overnight.
Absolutely. And it's the good, bad, and the ugly, we can't just kind of pick and choose which parts we want to own and which parts we want to love. You have to own and love it all.
Yep, exactly. If we want to move forward and if we want to enjoy what is truly out there for us to enjoy. Yes.
Absolutely. So how do we get started? I mean, you said you have these story retreats. So, let's imagine that we're at one of your retreats, and what is the whole point? What is the point of telling our stories? What is the point of getting it out there, and how do we get started?
Okay, those are actually 2 big questions.
I know.
I'm going to answer both of them. And that is, it's like, why story? why are stories important? And, stories are nothing new. They've been around for thousands of years.
Sure.
But it seems like more recently, in the last few years, we hear people use that term, whatever we're listening to. Oh, here's somebody's story. Listen to somebody's story, and this and that. And part of that has been because there's been a huge paradigm shift in our thinking, in our sales approach, in everything we do. And so basically, it's all about relationship now. And stories to me are the number one way to connect with one another. They're also the number one way to transform lives is through stories. And the number one way that people can get to know us, because it's really, like I said, it's all about experience. And as we share about us, it sometimes, very often, especially if it's shared on a personal basis, it gives others permission to share about themselves. And that's how we get to know one another. So even that whole idea, if we just stick with that idea of connecting with one another, if we can learn to use our story to connect with clients, potential clients, our neighbor, whoever it is, it will open up a whole new world. So that's, yes, that's why we want stories.
Absolutely. I know that for me, telling my story, or even just parts of my story, not only has it helped others, because I've had so many other people say, thank you so much for having the honesty, the courage, the openness, the bravery, whatever, to tell your story. It has encouraged me to be able to tell mine. You're letting me know that it's okay to come out with my story. But it's also very healing. And like you say with your book title, empowering. What I've found is the more I tell my trauma stories, especially, the less power they have over me.
That's a good point. And the other point that I felt like where you were going with that is, and the more I share my story, the more confidence that I have.
Yeah.
To talk about it more. I was absolutely terrified initially to be able to share it, especially when I had a coach who took me to a whole new level with my storytelling. And I mean, just truly terrified. Even after many years when I'd kind of shared bits and pieces here and there, that because when we're sharing from that level of vulnerability, it's always the risk of, getting hurt or, you're feeling so vulnerable and somebody can give you one statement that can just, really just devastate you. And you know how that is. You can speak to a group of 100 people, 99 absolutely love it. But it's that one sharp remark.
That's what we fixate on.
Yeah. And, we just got to let that go as well. But yes, it will give a lot of confidence. And the more confidence we have, we will be speaking from a place of empowerment and therefore have that much more impact with others. Yes.
Absolutely. And it does come from a place of vulnerability.
Oh, yes.
Yes, especially, for me talking about my domestic violence or my sexual assaults or the loss of my husband or, any of the other traumas that I have dealt with through my life. Those are incredibly personal and incredibly vulnerable. And so to have that strength and the courage and the confidence to put those out there, put myself out there, and to just kind of, open myself to complete strangers. In the beginning, yeah, it was terrifying. Yeah. Never mind the whole public speaking fears.
Right. Yeah, that's besides that, isn't it?
Oh my gosh. Yes. I got over those when I was in business and in sales and doing a lot of networking. But yeah, I remember the first time I had to get up and give my little 60-second commercial. I was like, oh my God, just please open the earth and swallow me. I'd never been so scared in my life.
Yeah,
but
it's amazing, isn't it? Yeah.
It is. But yeah, you stand up in front of an audience and you start talking about the fact that, you've been abused and you've been raped and you've had this, that, and the other thing. That's terrifying because you don't know how they're going to react. Are they going to accept you? Are they going to feel sorry for you? Are they going to judge you? Play the blame and shame game. So yeah, it's a tough one.
And yes, absolutely. That's really tough. The thing is, as you gain more confidence and you recognize, you know what, it's not about me. This is about, my purpose is to connect with my audience. I don't care if that audience is one-on-one, if it's a small group, if it's a large group.
Right.
But it's to connect with them. And when you think about, rather than thinking, how are they going to see me? And is it the blame and shame game or what is going on? If you think about, I know in this audience of 100 people, whatever it may be, I know that when statistics now are that 1 out of every 3 women are abused, that, and you start thinking about, as I'm vulnerable, how many people in my audience, if I could help a third of my audience, who have either identified with specifically with one of the traumatic things that I've gone through, would it be worth it? Absolutely it would be worth it. If we can help one person, it's worth it. But to think about helping a third of your audience, that's huge. And the thing is, sometimes your pain may be entirely different than what they're going through, but they will still identify with pain. Mm-hmm. Everyone has pain, problems, and conflict, and they'll identify with that. Even though the events, circumstances may be different, they will still identify and think, if she went through that and she can get on this platform and share what she's gone through, then I can too. And it builds confidence, and that's how it empowers others.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And one of the reasons why I like to share my stories is, I say that I am the voice for those who can't speak. Mm-hmm. At this point, maybe they're not ready to tell their stories. Maybe they're no longer here to tell their story. So in telling my stories, I am speaking for those who can't. And for me personally, that's very, very important. And especially in my healing. But I want to talk a little bit about the stories that we tell ourselves.
Okay.
Because those are just as important, if not even more, than the ones we talk about when we get up on the platform. Because the stories that we tell ourselves are even more intricate and intimate than what we would say on a stage. And unfortunately, oftentimes more harmful and hurtful and hateful.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So, yeah. So, how do we stop telling ourselves the stories that don't serve us?
Well, I think where we have to start is we have to start by identifying what those stories are. What are we telling ourselves? Because so often those voices go on in our head. And, it's almost like a habit, a bad habit that we just don't even stop and recognize. And if we actually stop and identify, it's like, wait a minute, what am I saying? What am I doing? That's not who I am. one of the little exercises that I do sometimes in my workshops or at the retreat, and that is to actually, I have a sheet of paper and it's like name tag. Oh, there are a bunch of name tags. So, hello, my name is. And I thought, I want you to write down either a name that someone in your past has called you or you have called yourself. And that's really identifying. So they have I think there's 8 name tags that fit on an 8.5 and 11 sheet of paper. And so they write down 8 things. And those names may be, devastated, degraded,
worthless,
humbled, ashamed, whatever it is. They can be anything at all. Now I said, I want you to go back to those names and take a look at those who you no longer believe. I want you to cross that out and put your new belief.
Oh, I like that.
And so then they go through that and do that. And it really makes you think, because you can't put something down if you haven't identified it. So you've got to identify it first and then take a look at that belief. Do I still believe that? If not, cross it out and put down your new name. So rather than, regret, cross that out and put down accepted. Rather than shame, believe in who I am. Rather than guilt, I am forgiven. Rather, and you can just go through each one. And it takes some thought, because like I said, you have to first recognize and identify what it is. Then you can make a choice to change it. And you can change it as simple as this. So every time that ugly voice starts coming back in our head, and it will come back.
Oh, yeah.
No, I said it will come back. But the difference is you don't have to stay there. You don't have to believe it. And when it does, just say stop and say, that is not who I am. I am and I'll often have them write out 3 significant words, kind of their top character traits. I am a loving, courageous, passionate leader. Hey, what am I doing even thinking those words? That's not who I am. It may represent part of my past. It's not who I am today, and I'm not operating with that. And so it's just a fun little exercise to be able to experience that transition, transformation. And, like I said, those ugly little voices will keep coming back. But the thing is, we have a choice as to whether we're going to listen to them or not. We can't stop them from coming up, but we can stop whether we're going to listen to it and say, that's not who I am. This is the new me. This is the confidence I walk in today. This is who I am.
Oh my gosh, absolutely. I love that exercise with the name tags. I was like going through my list. Which 8 will I pull out? The names that I have used or been called. But no, you're so right. If we just change our stories and we change the way we feel about them, the way we believe about them, or believe them, that it really has a huge impact on who we are and on how we evolve and how we grow and how we do everything.
It does. Because what we do is based on who we are, and who we are starts with our thinking. And so we're still hanging on to those ugly stories of the past. And it's like, why? I mean, and that's when I ask people sometimes, how is that serving you to hang on to those stories? It's only keeping us often in a place of victimization. And why do you want to stay there? Well, sometimes it does serve people to stay there because they have found that's how they've gotten attention and this and that. Mm-hmm. But it's like, wait a minute. Do you know what you're missing out on by staying stuck at that place? And the thing is, you don't have to. I'll tell you, reminds me of a few years ago, I went through a very intense leadership program over a 4-month period. And it was like, wow, this pushed me to limits I don't know when I'd been pushed at before. And so after this was all over, about a month or two after, I met with my coach, and she said, tell me what that experience was like for you. And I said, I'm glad I went through it, but I wouldn't want to go through it again. And she stopped and she exhorted me strongly. And she said, stop right now. She said, if you don't fully embrace every exercise, every situation that you went through in those 4 months, you will miss out on the abundance that is waiting for you. And I thought, oh my gosh, I mean, she was just, really firm about this. So after I got off that phone call, I sat down, I took my pad of paper, and I actually listed 25 things that I could come up with that I had not fully embraced. And I listed each one of them. And then I basically went through each one again, and I said, what did I learn from this? And what am I grateful for regarding this particular exercise, this experience, it was a very experiential kind of training, and with each thing. And when I was done, I felt like I was a different person, because I was released to move on to the next thing. And I thought, I often use the term positioning. Positioning is what we do with one thing, we do with all things. So if I'm not going to fully embrace what I've experienced here, then the next time hard things come along, I probably won't fully embrace that either. And before you know it, I'm really stuck in that area in my life. And then it comes down to, I have a choice. You don't have to stay there. It is a choice. It does mean you're going to have to go through the hard stuff in order to embrace it. But you know what? On the other side of that embrace is a new freedom, is abundance, peace and joy, and things that I wouldn't be able to experience otherwise. And it was one of the best things that she taught me. And I had a wonderful coach at the time. And yes, I worked with her for a year, and it was amazing. Yep.
Wow, that does sound amazing. And I was thinking that, a lot of times we, like you said, we get stuck in our stories for attention, but also because it's comfortable. It's that uncomfortable comfort zone.
Yep.
It's what we know. We don't know any different. And, an example is I struggle with weight, and in looking into myself and, listening to the stories I tell myself, one of the things that I realized was I no longer know who I am as a thin person. Mm. And so I am stuck in this uncomfortable comfort zone because I know what life is like in this body. It's this size, it's this weight, and all of that. I don't know what life is like anymore were I to get rid of the weight. And so it's that fear of the unknown. And so even though that's something I want and I want to experience that, it's still that fear that's keeping me stuck. And until I really rewrite those stories around all of this, I'm going to continue to stay stuck where I'm at.
That's a very good point, because one, we get uncomfortable. We get comfortable in, like you said, even though in a sense it's an uncomfortable place, at least we kind of know what to expect, and we've walked in there long enough. But if we change, we don't know. That's the fear of the unknown. We don't know what that's going to be like. And the other piece is, if I can add to that, is that in order to change, there's always a price tag. And it's like, what is the cost going to be? And it was one of the biggest things I think that I learned through my story journey, which was a very lengthy journey. And I realized that there was a lot of cost required for me to come to complete healing. But the biggest price I would ever pay is staying stuck in my story, because it would be the cost of relationships. It'd be the cost of my dreams. It'd be the cost of never being able to go to the potential that I was able to reach. And so there's many things that keep us stuck, and we rationalize and justify and everything else. But we have to decide, how important is this? And what do I believe is on the other side of this? Because I'll tell you what, as I walked through, and my journey to healing was a 45-year journey. And as I walked through that, and it wasn't like I was in pain all the time. My goodness, I feel I've lived a very fulfilled life. But it would just be out of the blue. All of a sudden, something would hit me. I would see something, see someone, whatever. And it would just trigger those messages. And I'm thinking, wow, when am I going to get past this? But I realized for me, it was facing the fear, the pain, whatever came up. Every time it came up, I had a choice. Do I run from it? Do I try and avoid it? Or am I willing to face it? Doesn't mean I have to face a full 45 years. It's just what's in front of me right here. And then I can move on. And the next time it comes up, same thing. I have a choice. I can face it. I can avoid it. I can run from it. I can do all the things that I've done in the past, or I can choose to face it and press through and move on. But it's huge. Absolutely.
Yep, absolutely. Linda, thank you so much for coming on and talking with us today. This has been great.
Oh, you're very welcome. Again, my pleasure. Thank you for the opportunity.
Absolutely. Listeners, you know the drill. I will have all of Linda's contact information, the link to her book and everything in the show notes. Just go to releasingtraumapodcast.com and pull up her episode. And as always, thank you so much for listening. Be sure you give us a like and a follow and shares and all that good stuff from whatever app you're listening to us on. And we will talk to you in the next show. Thanks for tuning in. Be sure you hit subscribe on your favorite podcast platform so you don't miss a show. Be sure to check us out on our new socials on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.